Immigration officers deciding EB-1A cases, they are human, apparently. In humans, it turns out we're quite irrational. We like to think we're rational, but often the rational part of our brain is taking a nap. Your job, when you don't hire a lawyer and you're working as your own advocate, is to sneak in while the adjudicator's rational brain is snoozing. In any event, your goal is to have the adjudicator's decision-making processes working in your favor. That is the goal of persuasion, and it's an art, really, and also the subject of this video. I'm Stefanakorli, I'm an immigration attorney, and I'm here to do for you what so many people have done for me over the years, and that is to provide important information that could potentially transform a life or two. I've seen mountains of EB-1A cases either prepared by the hopeful petitioner himself or herself, or prepared by a non-lawyer, or butchered in many cases by an attorney who doesn't specialize in these types of cases. I've seen a lot of train wreck petitions. And the sad part is that behind many cases of squandered opportunities is a brilliant person with the right lawyer, with the right use of different persuasive tools. Many of these eventual failures, denials, could have been approvals. So what are the right persuasive tools? How do you move beyond simply arguing a point and start triggering an unthinking, unconscious decision in your favor? I'm going to give you 10 tips. Let's start with this one. Don't be so partisan. You know what's less convincing than a used car salesperson? A used car salesperson who swears that every car on their lot is perfect, including the one with 3 wheels and a family of raccoons. Here's one counterintuitive tip you can use. Say figuratively, look, I know I'm not the second coming of Albert Einstein, but more literally you can say something like, in the interest of fairness, I recognize that I have not received a one-time achievement like a Nobel Prize or an Oscar, and for that reason I have to establish 3 out of the 10 EB-1A criteria. Simple. And trust me, giving something away, conceding something, makes you seem more reasonable. So look for something to give away. Here's another tip. Back up everything. This seems obvious, but people keep churning out cover letters and responses to requests for evidence that don't cite sources. Statements, claims, facts float around unsupported. They float around like my theory about why my favorite football team hasn't won a playoff game in 8 years. Interesting, but ultimately just my thoughts. When you cite everything, you gain credibility. And your credibility is everything, as you want the adjudicator to believe you and believe in you. You don't want the adjudicator to Google what percentage of humans are pathological liars. It's not good. Citation of almost everything that appears in your cover letter or your response to requests for evidence demonstrates that your arguments aren't just based on your opinion, but instead are anchored in hopefully authoritative sources. Citing things broadcasts your commitment to accuracy, honesty, verifiability, and thoroughness. 4 things you'd be wise to associate to yourself when you're trying to persuade. Here's another tip. Never advance weak arguments. Unfortunately, I often see people violate this tip. For instance, I often see people dump just about every credential they have into a case. Their cover letter goes something like this. John Doe won his high school science fair and also was an employee of the month at Radio Shack in 1997. I'm waiting for the case where someone discusses their perfect elementary school attendance record. Here's the harsh reality. You're not helping yourself. The reason is simple. You will be weakening, not strengthening your case. You don't want an adjudicator to think to themselves, man, if this is among some of their strong evidence, that evidence that I saw that I thought was strong, maybe it's not so strong after all. You don't want that. Weakness is contagious. Here's another tip. Don't try to sound like a lawyer. This is especially true if you're not one. There's nothing quite like a non-lawyer trying to sound lawyerly. ChatGPT f***ed up the game. It's aesthetically devastating. In fact, it's even good advice for lawyers to not sound lawyerly. This is something that I myself continue to work on, something I need to wrestle with. After all, we don't usually sound lawyerly in real life. Nobody goes home and says to their spouse, pursuant to our earlier textual conversation about dinner, I hereby request tofu. When it comes to writing, just be plain and simple. Of course, there is a delicate balance that needs to be struck. You don't want to be too informal. But you should also be careful with using $2 words. The key is that clearer, more straightforward language. Not necessarily informal, but simpler language. It strikes readers as more genuine, trustworthy, likable, and interestingly intelligent, making your arguments more persuasive in the process. Here's another tip. Don't seem too brilliant. Or better put, don't seem too clever. Instead of appearing to be clever, appear to be truthful. Rather than appearing to be a warrior intent on victory, appear to be a regular person intent on the truth. Picture this. You're considering buying a car. Or which salesperson has an easier path to the sale? Is it one who is world-renowned for their expert persuasive techniques? Or is it one who has a reputation of being committed to the truth no matter where it leads? Most people would say the salesperson who is committed to the truth would have an easier sell. The reason why, I believe, is probably obvious. Now, this doesn't mean you abandon effective techniques. You can and should still possess and use them. But the key is that you should not advertise them. You should not be showy in your use of them. Instead, use them discreetly and naturally. Here's another tip, and it applies to your case as a whole. This applies to your petition strategy, your legal arguments, the overall narrative you're presenting to USCIS. Good advocates call on simplicity and try to cut out complexity. When your case is simple and certainly not tangled up in needless complexity, it's easier for the adjudicator to follow along. Make it easy for the adjudicator. Here's another tip. Pick one theme and stick with it. By framing your case around one theme, you can influence the adjudicator's perception, making your theme or narrative the dominant way to understand the facts of the case. Understanding what a theme actually is will help you deploy this tip effectively. So let's talk about that. Theme serves as the controlling idea or core insight of a case. It provides the fundamental understanding or truth of the case. I'll give you an example of a theme for a case of an engineer/entrepreneur. The engineer/entrepreneur's name is Chloe Thorne. The evidence shows, it's important that I say the evidence shows because the theme needs to follow the actual evidence. The evidence shows that she developed the patented core technology that powers 2 of the world's leading electric vehicle charging networks. She also founded a startup that was acquired for millions. And her innovations have been featured in publications like Wired and MIT Technology Review. The latter publication recognized her as a thought leader in sustainable energy. The theme for this case might be always early. 2 words. Opening new doors. 3 words. The theme is typically very short, very simple, and always very important. Never appear sneaky. Be transparent. Be ethical. And just as important, appear transparent. Appear ethical. Here's an example of what not to do if you're trying to maximize your persuasive power. Don't write a 50, 60, 75-page cover letter in the third person about the petitioner with no explanation, not even a footnote about this writing choice, and then sign the letter yourself, making it clear that he or she or the petitioner that someone just read about for 75 pages is you. Don't do that. If you do want to write in the third person, and there are good reasons to refer to yourself in the third person rather than using I 10,000 times, then own the decision. Own it proudly. Own it early on. The key principle here is simple. Never appear sneaky about anything that you do. Remember, transparency and ethics aren't just moral imperatives. They are ironically secret weapons that will strengthen your case. Here's another tip. Curb your passion. I understand your case is important to you. I really do. However, passion is like cologne. A little goes a long way. Too much makes people get up and move to a different subway car. Here's why this matters. You want the adjudicator to do more than just believe you are an honest person. You also want them to believe that your judgment is solid and not hijacked by passion. Therefore, rein in your passion. And above all, never give the adjudicator a good reason to believe that your judgment is compromised. Here's another tip. Respect what you're doing. While it's good to pump the brakes on passion at times, the kind of passion that destroys your credibility, your case can and should be fueled by passion. Or maybe great effort is a better way to put it. After all, if you don't take your case seriously, why should anyone else? This passion or effort that I'm talking about in this tip, it should become apparent in how well prepared, error-free, and complete your case is, not through hyperbolic or emotional statements. Here's the paradox. The more you care about your case, the less emotional it might sound. The deeper your passion runs for your case, the more precise, thorough, and well-prepared it will be. True respect for what you're doing doesn't show up in exclamation points or impassioned pleas. It shows up in flawless execution. Respect your case by making it impossible to ignore, not impossible to be taken seriously. Now, these 10 tips that we discussed today, they represent just a fraction of the principles that we apply when putting together a case professionally. I hope this video has given you a better understanding into what goes into crafting a compelling case, as well as some insight into what other petitioners, your competitors, are having done for them. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that at my law firm, we specialize in handling EB-1A cases from start to finish for high-skilled professionals. If you have a case, contact information is in the description. Now go subscribe because more of this content is on the way. Subscribe like a green card depended on it.